Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my friend and co-author and colleague, Nancy Saxton-Lopez. And this is a broadcast that we do every Thursday when we're not on vacation from 6 to about 6:30. That is an extension of a book that we wrote called The Pet Loss Companion, Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. And it's an opportunity to share thoughts and recommendations and experiences that we think will be helpful to people who have either recently lost a pet or they are dealing with a situation where their pet's declining and maybe their pet is not going to be with them for much longer. The program can be helpful for people who are in any way dealing with the loss of a pet or anything related to that. And we welcome your comments and questions both during the program and afterwards, and suggestions for future discussions. You can reach me at kenddv@gmail.com, and you can reach Nancy at nsaxtonlopez. That's her last name without any of the hyphen, at csmpc.com. And we like to let you know that this program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. Dakin is a 501c3 community-supported animal welfare organization that provides shelter and medical care and spay-neuter services and behavioral health rehab for more than 20,000 animals and people each year. Dakin is very focused on the animal companion human being bond. Since its inception in 1969, Dakin has become one of the most recognized nonprofit organizations in central Massachusetts and a national leader in animal welfare. You can learn more about Dakin and make a donation at dakinhumane.org. That's DAKIN humane, HUMANE.org. Nancy, do you want to get us started?
Sure. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the questions that come up a lot around illness or potential end-of-life issues, what I should have done, what I could have done, why didn't I do, that kind of leads to an overarching guilt. And so we're going to talk about that a little. But first I want to say, Ken, I'm sorry for your loss of Abigail. I know she died, a few weeks ago, I think now. And it was Isabel's pal who died in June, I believe.
Yeah, Isabel died June 19th, and Abigail died August 23rd. Here's Abigail. She was a beautiful little dog, and she died very suddenly, actually. She had had some bouts on and off with what was thought to be bronchitis. In fact, she was pretty sick the day after Isabel died and was treated for it. And then she was great for a number of weeks. And then she went into crisis just hours before she died. We were treating her for a couple days, following our vet's advice, and then she just went into crisis. And so, yeah, we lost her on the 23rd. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, Isabel called her probably. She was like, I'm lonely up here, right?
We actually thought that Abigail felt like, my whole pack is gone. She was the last of four. And maybe that was part of what, it says, who knows,
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is that I've been working with actually 3 people recently. It happens always in threes. I was wondering, and then the third one came along. There's a woman I've been working with for a long time, a single woman, and she's an older woman. And she had learned about how wonderful a companion dog is probably about 12 years ago. She rescued this dog. And unfortunately, the dog is not doing well right now. And she has a lot of questions, and there's a lot of anxiety, right? So what do I do? I mean, What am I supposed to do? I mean, how do I take her to a vet? Do I not take her to a vet? What's the vet going to do? I mean, how much time does she have? And she's starting to try to prepare herself. The dog is old. I mean, she's 15, and
Mm.
she's, kind of stares off into space, and she sleeps
Hmm.
a lot, has a hard time getting up. There's a little bit of vomit. There's a little bit of diarrhea, these things. And, we're talking about, the quality of life. So that's one person that I've been in touch with, obviously, almost daily. The second one is a very close friend of mine who called me the other night and said her dog was doing the same thing. It was basically the same thing. And she goes, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to work with this. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I know what I'm supposed to do. Right.
Yeah.
So she's going through the same thing. And I have a couple that I used to work with, and they called and said their dog, who was 16, is actually doing the same thing. So it was this whole week and a half of really trying to work with these three people, or these two families and a person, to help them manage their anxiety and
Right.
alleviate some of these questions that they don't want to feel guilty about when something may happen, right?
Right.
So, I think that's, it starts the process of all of those questions, and because it starts even before death.
Sure. And there is there are these ongoing questions about what should I do?
Yeah.
And am I doing enough? Am I
Yeah.
doing too much? And one of the things that strikes me immediately about what you're describing is that these people aren't going it alone. You said one of the people is single, at least one of the people is
Yes,
single.
one person is
but
going.
they're talking with you.
Yes.
And I presume that they're talking with their veterinarian as well. Yeah. And they're following the guidance that both of you are providing to them. And I think that that's so key in this kind of a situation, because we're up against realities that are to some extent unknowable. We really don't know what's going on physiologically, and also wildly out of our control. We have no control over what's happening in this big picture of the animal's health and
what's going on in their body. What's
happening in their body. And one of the things that I think we also have to confront is the limits of what even these highly trained professionals know.
Yeah.
So you can believe that a health condition is under control and you're following the guidance of your veterinarian, and it turns out that the situation is actually different from what all of their testing and all of their knowledge and experience tells us about what's happening. And that is nobody's fault.
No.
That's just another example of the limits of our understanding, the limits of our control. And it feels awful in the moment, and it feels awful afterwards.
Well, that was something that happened with Abigail, right? Because you were back and forth with the vet, and the vet said, hey, your heart's good. She has this cough, and, and I'm sure that they were kind of shocked in some ways.
Yeah. And that's the way it is. So one of the things that I always have to remind myself and other people about is that there are limits to what can be known. Exactly. And so, for example, in our case, Abigail had some kind of clouding in her lungs, but her behavior the week before, Friday before she died, Monday morning before she died, and she died on Monday evening, all of it said she doesn't look so bad.
Exactly.
It looks like she maybe has a little bronchitis. There could be something else going on, but behaviorally, and in terms of everything we can get through X-rays and listening to her heart and lungs, we're not seeing a lot that's identifiable as a big problem. So we'll give her the antibiotic, and we expect that she's going to get better.
And that's what happened with Molly. When Molly went into the hospital, they said, all right, well, hopefully she's going to get through the vertigo, and all of a sudden she dies. So, when they were calling and saying, they were, I could hear it in their voice that we did everything we could. I mean, they were almost shocked, and it wasn't their fault, and it's not your vet's fault. It's what it is. And so we have to come to that reckoning that we don't have a lot of control. No matter how, over disease, over genetics, over biology, we just don't have it.
Yeah, and maybe you can talk some about that article that you shared with me today. I think it gives a good window into why we feel like we should have control.
Right, exactly. So I found this article. It was on Medium, but it was an article that was named Stuff No One Tells You About Dying Pets, Guilt and Relief. Okay, that's the name of the article. And it's a really interesting name. It's Reidun, Reidun, Saxerud, Saxerud. And what she says is we choose everything, right? For our dog or cat or our animal, our horse, our guinea pig, right? Toys, food, medical care, when they go out, how they go out, what type of litter there is. I mean, we choose everything for them.
We structure their whole existence.
Their whole life, right? And so, and that's why we love them. One of the reasons we love them, right? Because they need us, right? They're dependent upon us. They're like our children, right? So we have to take care of them.
Our children who never completely grow up.
That's right. They never leave our nest, right? They're there. And so the definition of guilt is a cognitive or an emotional experience that occurs when a person believes or realizes, accurately or not, that they have compromised their own standards of conduct or have violated universal moral standards and bear significant responsibility for that violation. So it stands to reason that whenever a pet parent makes a decision about their animal's health, we feel solely responsible for it because functionally we are, right? We do everything for them. We're the ones that take that. We're the ones that give them their medications. However, as we just said, we cannot control biology or genetics or disease. When our pets get old, we can only do so much for them. And when they start to fail, our anxiety increases because that's why we feel responsible for what to happen to them, right?
We're responsible for everything about them through all these years of their lives. And now we can't help them. We can't fix it. We can't. We are facing something that is outside of we're facing mortality, which is way outside our control. But we've come to believe that we're responsible for maintaining their lives because we have been responsible for maintaining all aspects of their lives. And that's a hard reality to break through our awareness. It's just really hard
to do that. We should be able to save them.
Yeah, we should be able to save them.
Yeah. And the problem is that we will feel responsible, so guilty about a death, a tragic death, an anticipatory death, a sudden death, whatever it is, because we have had that responsibility for their whole life.
Yeah.
So if a dog is hit by a car, oh my God, the door was open. I didn't shut the door. It's my fault. There were so many things that you can agonize over, even if the animal is sick, even if the animal dies suddenly or it's a long-standing illness, because that's when all those questions come in. That's why these three people that are dear to me that I'm working with, I don't know what to do. Of course you don't know what to do because we don't know what's going on. Yeah. And so you feel like you should know what to do.
Yeah, and that validation is so crucial. That validation of, the best experts don't really know what to do. And
That's right.
so we're edging into this place that is uncontrollable. We're edging into an experience that is not something that we can be responsible for because we don't have the power
Right.
to be responsible for life and death. That's not within our job description, and it's outside of our realm.
Isn't that scary though? When you start to put yourself in that place, it is scary, right? Because
Very scary.
you're waiting you're waiting, right? It's a waiting game, especially with these three cases, or people that
Yeah.
have an animal that's sick and older, and when's it going to happen? And I remember when Noelle was sick and she was older, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night, we're looking at her and saying, "Oh my God, she's breathing," and
Yep.
because you would get so you can't control if she's
Yeah.
going to stop breathing, right?
Yeah.
So it was so agonizing, and I know it is
It's
for a lot of people.
it's interesting what you're saying, because when Isabel died, I so ridiculous. I had several conversations with Abigail in which
Oh, yeah.
I made her promise that she would stay with us for at least 2 more years.
I know. I get it. I mean, I
I
get
was
it.
holding her. I was saying that to her. Now you promise, right?
Well,
And she couldn't keep her promise. I'm sure she tried.
I understand it, because Molly died, or we have 4 pugs. Hank died, Rosie died, Molly died, and Jack's our last one. And of course, Molly died this year. It's been a yearly thing. And every morning we go, Jack, not this year.
Right. That not
We're done this
today.
year. We're done
Not
this
today.
year. Okay.
Yeah. And
Right.
I actually said that the morning that we lost her. I actually said, not today. It's not
Right.
happening today. And it did happen today. But I have to look back on that, and it's so ridiculous that I'm holding this little dog and saying 2 years, right? That's the deal. You're going to give me 2 more years, right? We can count on that, can't we? 18, that's not terribly long from now. She just couldn't do it.
And that's it. And of course, when it happened, it was devastating and painful and sad, but it was her time. And it's one of those things that you have no control over, right?
Yeah, and think about the sort of magical thinking that I'm exhibiting, and that we exhibit with that, somehow we're gonna figure this out, and we're gonna make it happen. And because we have been able to make so much happen, right?
Yes.
We've been able to give them a life where they've lived in comfort, and all their needs have been attended to, and they've had a great relationship with us and other family members, and they've done all kinds of things that we assume were joyful and enriching and brought them contentment. And then we reached the wall.
We reached the wall, and we're like, so, and that's when all the questions come in. They come in before, when animals are very sick, and there's that anxiety starts to grow, and you're waiting, and you're just wondering, how am I going to go through this? How am I going to help my beloved? What do I do with this? How do I go on? There's so many questions, and it's like you're on a runaway train.
Yep.
You can't stop.
And you can't. You just go along with it, and you make the decisions that you think are best in the moment. One of the hardest things, I think, is to reflect on your decisions and really say to yourself, I did the best I could at the time, and be gentle in that way. It's so very hard. It's not something that we want to do, because I do think that a big part of this is that it's very scary to recognize that not just in this situation, but in all situations, our degree of control is fairly limited. And that's part of life that we don't want to stare in the face very much. And so we go through we'd rather in some ways feel guilty than feel out of control.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. You know, and it's interesting because then it goes into, you know, euthanasia, right? Because you do have control to make that decision
Right.
for them, even though they have trusted you forever, right? And
Yep.
taken care of them. Now, that said, they have no judgment. They don't criticize. They love you unconditionally. And if they're suffering and if they're in pain and if their quality of life, which we really try to go by, is such that they really don't have any life, then we do have that opportunity. Now, that said, 99% of the time, people feel guilty after that.
Sure.
Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I waited too long. Oh my God, it was too soon. Maybe something else could have been helped her. I mean, then it goes back into all of those questions again.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important, if at all possible, for there to be a collaborative decision making, really collaborative, so that you know that you made it with others who love and respect your much loved animal companion, and that they helped you to make the right choice at the right moment. I have to say, it's sometimes it's moment to moment. And when my little Abigail was gasping for breath and her heartbeat was decreased, so we said at this point, we're not going to. I can't remember exactly the sequence, but we'd like for you to end her suffering. We'd like for you to give her the injection. And they tried twice to give her the barbiturates, and they couldn't find a vein because she's a tiny little dog. And so they were going to do a third. The vet was going to do a third time, and this was a vet who we didn't know, who was part of the practice, not her regular vet. And I said to her, just stop it, just let her go, because I couldn't stomach the idea that they were just trying, and her breathing was becoming very, very irregular. And so we didn't try anymore. We just let her go.
How long after that did she die?
Oh, 3 minutes maybe. But they were saying to us, she's not really with us anymore, that kind of stuff. But it was such a weird scene, and I felt like I had to make another decision. Just stop it, because what's the point? What's the point? Right. She's almost gone, Yeah. And
I mean, it's so hard to go through. Anyway, it happens. It's really hard. And then, what did you have questions afterwards? Like
what happened? There's. I often think about, should you do an autopsy, and never have decided to do it. When I was a 6-year-old, I guess, we had a rabbit, and the rabbit died, and my parents had an autopsy done because they wanted to know why, and they found that the rabbit had choked on a big piece of lettuce. I believe that was the thing, or that it got caught in her intestinal tract in a way that it couldn't pass. And I have not done that with any of our animals. My husband and I have not done it because we've been of the opinion that it wouldn't matter. They're gone.
Right.
That you just have to accept that they're gone. And the details at that level have not been of great interest to us, because it's almost like it feeds those questions in a way that I don't want to.
Exactly. No, and that's fine. I mean, and I don't think probably most people do an autopsy on animals. It's rare that I've heard that. I mean, it happens, but it's rare that I hear that. I mean, I guess if you were a breeder and there were some issues that you didn't know what it was because it's in your bloodline,
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think too many people do that. However, that is an option. Because
how are your clients doing? with this?
They're all
With,
upset. I mean,
with this
obviously,
uncertainty, this
yeah,
rolling uncertainty, right?
right. I got to touch base with one tonight because her dog went in. The single woman, her dog went in to have an ultrasound. There's something in her digestive area. And she said to me, she's a pretty pragmatic woman. She's a scientist by
Hmm.
trade. And she said, I'm preparing myself.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
preparing myself. She hasn't been, the same for a year now. She probably has some level of dementia.
Yeah.
She's not really active. She has to carry her down the stairs to go out. And so she was preparing herself. My good friend, I talked to her, I said, how is he doing? And she said yesterday he's doing a little better. Now, I know that that's wishful too in some ways because he does bounce back every once in a while. However, that we don't know. He is 16, or almost 16. And the couple has texted me just today and said that they have made an arrangement for a euthanasia vet. So I think that they have made a decision.
Yeah.
I sent them the quality of life scale, which I think is really helpful, even though it's still subjective, right?
Yeah.
But it
Sure.
does have, hunger. Are they eating? Or are they not? I mean, certainly not eating for a period of time is an indicator, right? And are they drinking water? That's another one. And they hurt. Is there pain?
Yeah.
Are they panting a lot? Are they wincing a lot? Or are they crying out? Those kind of things. And hygiene. I mean, a lot of times, are they urinating in the house? Or are
Yeah.
they, defecating in the house? Can they not hold themselves, to go out? And happiness. So that's a hard one, right? But happiness should be
Yeah.
play, joy,
Yeah.
responsive to people, or do they look kind of morose or sad or out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think and mobility, can they get up? Can they not?
Yeah.
How are they
Yeah.
walking?
I'm
And
sure that all of the scale that you're talking about just helps people to get more clear,
exactly.
gain clarity.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last is more good days. Do they have more good days and bad days? Now
Yeah.
there is a scale. It's 0 to 10. If it's 35 or over, it's good. But if it's under, there really isn't too much of a quality of life, which I think is as painful to hear or to determine, but that gives a baseline, right, of some sort.
Yeah. I mean, all of these consultations and the scales and all of this helps people to get to a place that feels more certain, I think,
Yeah.
in a very uncertain thing. I mean, this is hugely subjective, and it's any tool that you can use to gain degrees of certainty can't hurt. It can only help.
And there are multiple quality of life scales. You can go online under PET, quality of life.
And we've linked to one or more of them in previous conversations.
Right. But I do think that that's helpful, even though it's still painful, because that's the decision. Then you make that decision to end a life. But if you know that their quality of life is not there, it's
really, the grief is a layered process. So when your client says, I'm preparing myself, I mean, that's a new level of anticipatory grief, because now she's really given herself over to the reality that the end is near.
Yes, the end.
And when you make the appointment for euthanasia, that's the appointment for euthanasia. You're at another level of recognition of the impending nature of the loss. So I see grief as sort of this rolling process of awareness, and even like when you get after you've lost your animal family member and you go and get, let's say, their ashes, if that's what you've decided to do, that's another moment that punctuates the grief. It's another sort of level of, okay, now this is the very concrete reality of their death, of their loss. And so all of this, I think, is just really important to keep in mind that it's very much a process.
It's a process.
Different for everybody. It's very individualized. We don't want to judge other people or feel like my way is the right way or their way is the right way. It's just
and
not
also
the way it is.
we don't always have any control over certain things.
The limits of our control are far more restricted than we would like to imagine about everything in life, I think, which is also a good argument for doing everything you can to live joyfully and fully all the time, because we are at the mercy of forces that are well outside our ability to manage, and so do the best we can for ourselves and for our animal companions. That's the best we can do. All the time, every moment. So I guess we should wrap up. We're out of time. It's great conversation as always, Nancy. And thank you for the card and for the butterfly bush.
Of course.
Thanks very much. That means a lot to me.
Isabel and Abigail were always together, so they have to be bushes.
All right. Thanks a lot. I look forward to talking with you next week.
Take care, everyone.